Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly. I do all sorts of videos on my channel, cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, Disney content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope that you will subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. Kiddo is right over there playing on his iPad. He's having a good time. So if you hear some background noise, that's what's going on. We're a real family, this is a real household, and so some background noise is bound to happen. I am back in my kitchen, as you can see, because today I want to share a recipe with you guys. And this is not for any collab or for any particular reason, other than like, I just kind of want to eat this, so I figured I've never made this recipe before. I might as well record it and share it with you guys in case you're looking for a similar recipe. We can discover this together, right? Today I'm going to be making a Funfetti cake, which is my favorite kind of cake. However, it's very, very rare that I get to eat it. In fact, it's been years because I am gluten and dairy free, and so there are Funfetti cake mixes that exist that are gluten and dairy free, but I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a from scratch recipe that I can do as well, and that way I don't have to rely on being able to find a mix at a store. So I'm embarking on that today. This cake is not only going to be gluten and dairy free, it's actually vegan as well. So if you are vegan, then you will be able to use this recipe. If you're not gluten-free, you can use regular flour. If you aren't dairy-free, you can use regular butter and milk. But if you are all of the above, then you would be following the recipe exactly as I am giving it to you. So, with all that being said, let me show you the ingredients. So the first thing we're going to need is a cup of unsweetened almond milk or oat milk, whatever vegan milk you want to use, or regular milk if you're not worried about dairy free. I am, as always, going to be using my original nut pods. This is not milk per se, it's technically coffee creamer, but I use it in place of milk, whipping cream, anything really whenever I'm cooking or baking, and I find that it has the best texture. It's got a good flavor that's not super strong, so it's not going to overpower anything. I'm talking about the original in particular. So this is my go-to for all things dairy replacement. Next, we'll need 1/3 of a cup of melted vegan butter. This is my first time using their oat milk based butter, but I use the Miyoko's like stick butter for baking and cooking all the time. I saw this recently at Sprouts and I thought, why not? Let's give it a try. So I'm going to be using 1/3 of a cup of this melted. We're going to need 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Need 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm using the Dominican style vanilla because it's my favorite kind, but you don't have to use this. You can use whatever you've got. As we all know around here, the 1 teaspoon of vanilla is just a suggestion. I'm gonna keep going until my ancestors tell me to stop. Next, we're going to need 1 3/4 cup of flour. So as always, I'm using Bob's Red Mill, the 1-to-1. This is my favorite flour for baking, cooking, everything. It's the only one I have found that does not have that funky metallic aftertaste that I've noticed with a lot of gluten-free flours. And I've tried them all. I've been gluten-free for several years, and this is my favorite one by far. So I'm going to be using that today. And lastly, we're going to need 1/4 cup of sprinkles. Now, I got these specifically because they have no artificial dyes. So those are all of our super simple ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 375, and we're going to get started on our cake batter. First things first, I want to melt my butter, and I have to measure my butter first. So you don't have to do this. You can eyeball it. You can use a actual like measuring spoon, but I prefer to do things by weight when I'm baking because I feel like that's the most accurate way of making sure that you're following the recipe. So I just checked, and 1/3 of a cup in tablespoons is 5 1/3. So this is 14 grams per tablespoon. 14 times 5 1/3 comes to 74.62. So I am going to be aiming for 75 grams of butter. And again, this might be overkill. You could just use your measuring spoons and get your amount that way, or a measuring cup even. but I prefer, specifically when baking, because when you're cooking you can riff a little more and you're gonna get the proper result anyways, but baking is a lot more of a science, and so the more precise you are, the better your outcome. And that might be why a lot of people find that their baked goods don't turn out as well as they hope, is because a lot of the time they're just not measuring correctly. Melting the butter took all of 15 seconds, so that's ready to go. I'm going to spray my cake pan. I probably don't need to because it's silicone, but the recipe says to, so just in case. My 8 or 9 inch cake pan. I genuinely don't know. Either way, the recipe is meant for a loaf pan, so we're just going to guesstimate here as far as baking time, etc. So use your loaf pan, your 9 inch loaf pan, or your cake pan, whatever you're using. Spray it down, set it aside. I'm gonna use another like sturdier metal pan underneath this so that it's easier to take in and out of the oven. In a bowl, I'm going to put my almond milk, my nut pods in this case. So that's 1 cup of that. My melted butter, meticulously measured. 3/4 of a cup of sugar. For this I am going to use measuring cups. And I'm going to do the same with my flour. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3/4 of a cup of sugar. I'm going to add in my teaspoon of baking soda right there. There goes our oven, preheated to 375. I'm going to put in my 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder right there to give us our lift for our cake. And lastly, our vanilla. That looks fine. I'm going to use a spoon to get this all mixed up. You can obviously use a whisk, a spatula, whatever you like. I might switch to a spatula once I get the flour going in here. It's interesting actually that they had us put the baking soda and baking powder in with the liquid ingredients, because typically I see in recipes that you're supposed to mix that in with the flour and get that well dispersed in the flour before you bring all those dry ingredients into the wet. I'm actually finding that the baking powder is clumping a little bit, so I'm trying to make sure to break up those clumps so that everything is nice and evenly mixed. That looks good now. So now we can move on to our flour, and that was going to be 1 3/4 cups, so 7 of these 1/4 cup measurements. Alright, I thought for a minute we weren't going to have enough, but we just made it. Now I will switch to a spatula just to make this a little bit easier. Bring that all together. Okay, so that's the situation right now. It's looking pretty good. Very much cake battery. Now our last addition is going to be the 1/4 cup of sprinkles. I don't want to over mix these because I don't want the sprinkles to start kind of melting into the batter before they run into the oven. So I'm just going to give it a quick little flick of the wrist here just to disperse the sprinkles throughout all of the batter. And that's it. Leave it alone. Actually, let me make sure that all these sprinkles come off of the spatula here. And that's it. We're leaving her alone. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to grab our cake pan that's been waiting so patiently for us this whole time. And we're just going to get everything loaded up. So as I said, this recipe is originally intended for a loaf pan. So if you're using a loaf pan, you're going to bake for about 45 minutes or until the cake is golden. But we're using a round pan, so I'm going to bake it for less time. I'm going to start checking at about 30 minutes, and I'll give it more time if I need to. But basically, I'm looking for the same thing. I'm looking for a golden cake, and I want the middle to be clean when I do the toothpick test. I don't want anything to be obviously wet looking, because obviously that means we need more time. So we're going to start at 30 minutes, and we'll check after that. While we're waiting for the cake to bake, let's talk about icing. So I'm looking at my phone here so I can give you guys ingredients. If you want to do a vegan vanilla icing, and you can do this whether the cake is warm or cool. If you do it while the cake is warm, you're going to get more of like a translucent, drizzly effect. If you wait until the cake's cool, then it might be more opaque, so more white looking, and it will sit at the top of the cake rather than just sink into it or drizzle down. So the icing, you could use 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of softened vegan butter, so not quite melted, not quite cold from the fridge, somewhere in the middle, 1 tablespoon of unsweetened almond milk, oat milk, what have you, and a teaspoon of vanilla. So you would mix that up until it's uniform in consistency, and like I said, drizzle it over the top of a warm cake if you want more of a, well, drizzle, or you could wait until the cake is cool and it will set up more like a firm icing. If you wanted to make your own vegan cream cheese frosting, you could use 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons again of the softened vegan butter, and 2 ounces or 1/4 cup of vegan cream cheese. My favorite brand is the Kite Hill brand, but there's a ton of varieties out there. Everybody's got their favorite, so try some out, see what you like. I was thinking about opting for this right here, which is a pre-made dairy-free vegan cream cheese frosting. The brand is Miss Jones Baking Company, and I use this brand all the time. I really like their cream cheese frosting in particular, but I'm feeling like maybe I might just have the cake on its own today. If I were putting a topping on it though, it would be this, and I might follow it up with some of these fun little tiny sprinkles or nonpareils. These are definitely gluten-free. They may or may not be vegan though, so make sure you check your labels. So here's our cake after 30 minutes. It is looking very golden and pretty, and the edges feel cooked, but the middle still feels a bit squishy, and where it's cracked, you can actually see that the batter is a tiny bit wet. So I'm gonna put it back into the oven. I think I'm gonna give it maybe 5 more minutes, and hopefully, since the outside is already pretty much cooked, the carryover, meaning the rest of the time that it spends cooking even when it's out of the oven, most foods do that, hopefully the carryover will be enough to get it completely cooked. Because I feel like if I give it too much more than the extra 5 minutes in the 375-degree oven, yeah, the inside will be cooked, but the outside is going to start to burn, and we don't want that either. Okay, it's now been 45 minutes since I took the cake out of the oven. As you can see, I removed the metal pan that it was cooking on, and I put it on a cooling rack to kind of help it along. It's looking quite nice and golden, as you can see. So I'm going to take a plate, and it should flip right out between the oil spray and the fact that it's a silicone pan. Hopefully I don't eat my words right now. Oh, that's perfect. Look how pretty. So there's our cake. And so now I'm going to give it a little slice. It feels very nice. Definitely feels cooked. Go ahead and pre-slice it into the 8 portions that it should render. This right here will be my piece. That is very nice, very well done. So all that's left to do is give it a taste. And like I said, I'm leaving mine bare, but you can feel free to use icing or homemade cream cheese frosting, store-bought cream cheese frosting, anything you like really. Whatever you would typically want to have on a Funfetti cake, feel free to enjoy here. Okay, here we go. That looks very nice. It's sweet, it's dense. It's got a perfect vanilla flavor. This is just a really nice cake. The sprinkles are not super obvious in the cake. You can see the spots throughout, but not those bright colors. If you don't mind artificial dyes, a conventional sprinkle is gonna hold up much better than the ones I used. But I think that they're just fine. They're adding all of the whimsy that I hoped for. And honestly, it's just a really yummy cake. Alright friends, I'm excited to finish my slice of cake. I really hope that you guys will try this recipe. I'm planning to wrap whatever I don't share today with friends and family in some plastic wrap and stick it in the freezer so that whenever I want a nice sweet treat, I can defrost it overnight, or I can stick it in a cold oven and warm it up that way and reconstitute it to its current glory. But it turned out really, really nice. I'll definitely keep this recipe for whenever the next birthday or like celebratory event rolls around. And if you guys try it, I really hope that you'll come back and let me know how you liked it. I want to thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click the notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!